Okay, we need to talk about something that's been happening quietly in the background of our lives. It's a huge social trend, the decline of modern friendship. And as we're about to see, the consequences of this are, well, a lot more serious than you might think.
So let me just kick this off with a question for you. Can being lonely, can it actually be bad for your physical health? The answer, it turns out, is central to this entire story.
And the answer is a huge, resounding yes. Get this, recent studies have shown that not having a close friend is as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Just let that sink in for a second. It's an absolutely staggering comparison that puts this whole problem into a new light.
So yeah, this is a genuine health crisis, a kind of silent epidemic. But here's the tricky part. While the physical impact is becoming crystal clear, the subject of friendship itself, it's actually really difficult for social scientists to get their arms around.
And it's tough to study for a few big reasons. I mean, how do you even measure the quality of a friendship? What even counts as a friend in the age of social media? And on top of all that, there's a real stigma around loneliness. People are often pretty hesitant to admit they don't have friends, which, you can imagine, makes getting good data a real challenge.
But even with all those challenges, researchers have spotted a very clear and disturbing trend. They've even given it a name: the friendship recession.
The term friendship recession was coined by a scholar named Daniel Cox, and it basically describes this widespread social downturn where more and more of us are finding ourselves without close friends, without that go-to support system for when things get tough.
And that's the real-world consequence, right? When we're in a crisis, when we really need that shoulder to cry on, we are just less likely to turn to a friend than people were in the past. That fundamental way we support each other has really started to shift.
This marks a huge break from the classic idea of friendship. I mean, you look at someone like Aristotle, and he saw friendship as this relationship of genuine equality. It was something you valued for its own sake, not for what you could get out of it. It wasn't transactional. But today, so many of our relationships seem to have this what's in it for me vibe, which is the exact opposite of that ideal.
So what is going on here? What are the massive forces in our society that are actually driving us apart like this?
Well, researchers point to four main things. First, we're all moving around a lot more for our careers, which stretches our social networks super thin. Second is this trend of intensive parenting, which just doesn't leave much time for friends. Third, there's the rise of workism, this idea that your job is your identity, which just sucks up all your time and energy. And finally, relationship breakdowns. When a couple splits, it can completely shatter an entire friend group.
And all of these factors, they come with a real measurable cost. When we dig into the data, it becomes pretty clear that some groups are getting hit way harder than others. Just take this in for a second. Today, a shocking 15% of young men say they have no close friends. None.
And to see just how fast this has happened, look at this. Back in the 1990s, that number was only 3%. Today, it's 15%. That is a five-fold increase in just a few decades. That's not a slow drift, it's a cliff.
So who are they turning to instead? Well, this chart shows a pretty radical change in our support systems. Today, only about 22% of young men say they'd turn to a close friend in a crisis. Who do they go to? Their parents. 36% now say they'd turn to their parents first. And look, this isn't just about men. The pandemic was like a massive stress test for all our friendships. And interestingly, it seems women were hit particularly hard, with over half reporting that they lost touch with at least some friends. And that might be because their friendships often rely more on that consistent face-to-face time.
So, faced with all of this, what do we do? How do we move forward? There's no easy fix here. What it might actually take is a fundamental shift in how we think about friendship itself. I absolutely love this metaphor. We tend to think of friendship as something that just happens, like a flower that just blooms on its own. But the reality is, it's much more like a woodworking project. It takes skill, it takes intention, and it takes constant work. You literally have to carve out the time and space for it in your life. And that work, it all starts with something that can feel incredibly hard for a lot of us. It requires vulnerability. It means we have to admit that we have a need, that we want to connect with another person.
Which brings me to a final and maybe the most important question. What do you think is one of the hardest things for any of us to actually say out loud?
It might just be this. Saying the words, "I need a friend." It's just so vulnerable, right? But in a world that's going through a friendship recession, maybe that's the one sentence we all need to get a little more comfortable saying.